Welcome back to the Fundamental Escape podcast. I'm your host, Mark Fitzgerald, and today we're diving into the whole subject of getting great mentors around you and being intentional about growing and learning what you need to in order to reach the next stage of your journey. I've learned unequivocally that the best way to put yourself in a position to start winning is to get in the proximity of those you admire and aspire to emulate. We are shaped in the fire of the environments that we inhabit. So be very intentional about the environments you put yourself into. So I do believe that we are shaped by those around us, regardless. When we get deliberate and intentional, we can accelerate the process of getting ahead and start growing in ways that we couldn't imagine if we were just remaining on autopilot. Today's guest is a man I've known for a good few years now. We've had many conversations, some on this podcast. He has taught me lessons and demonstrated possibilities to me beyond what I think he even realizes. He is an authentic, humble, adventure-driven entrepreneur, one of the founders of Excess Energy Drinks and other great products, and all-around good human, David Vanderveen, aka The Vandies. Enjoy this conversation. Okay, alrighty, I just hit record kind of accidentally. Okay, cool, let's just go. Awesome, so I'll just do a little intro. I can edit this beginning, that's cool. So this is episode 1 of the relaunch of the Fundamental Escape podcast, and I thought it would be more than fitting to invite Mr. David Vanderveen on the show, aka The Vandies. Do you want to say hello to the audience, Vandies?
Oh, yeah. I'm here.
Yeah, I've got, hold on.
Just cracked in excess and I'm right here.
Did you hear that?
Oh, man, that sounded delicious.
It is. It's very delicious.
What are you drinking there, Mark?
It is Excess Cola Blast.
Whoa, Cola Blast.
Zero sugar.
Man.
So that's pretty fantastic.
It's really good.
So this is a pretty casual start, I might say myself. So you're familiar with the podcast. You've been a guest a couple of times, and we're doing it all over again. So a bit of a different vibe I'm kind of aiming for this time. So kind of going for that what's
the Fundamental Escape podcast all about, Mark?
Well, it's about this time around, I guess, to sum it up. I'm on a bit of a journey, sort of expanding my horizons and asking some fundamental questions about what's possible in the space of one human lifetime. Wow. There you go.
How old are you, Mark?
I am 36. I was born in 1982. Yes.
So are you, this is like you're moving forward from 36 and then really getting cranking? Is that what is happening right now?
That's the plan. Yeah, I'm getting fit and healthy. I'm losing weight and getting more energy, and it's all good stuff, really.
So where are you right now? Like, what's your give me your current state of affairs?
Well, I'm living in Auckland, New Zealand, and hold on one second. Can you hear that noise in the background by any chance?
It's not significant.
Oh, okay. It is to me. Okay, that's fine. All right, we can edit. Cool. To answer your question, so I am in Auckland, New Zealand, and currently staying at a kind of hostel / backpackers, which isn't, it's not that orthodox, I guess, but it's kind of nice. It's a nice space, and I'm meeting all kinds of interesting people from all around the world and having conversations, and it's kind of a social time in my life again, which is a nice welcome change, I must say.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you get to meet a lot of people who are traveling through New Zealand, and do you have your own space there?
Yeah. So I've got like a single room and stuff, and it's I've got a little crash pad, so it's I've got my own little zone. It's good.
Nice. Awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's good. So yeah, and as I mentioned, so I released a little like a 5-minute kind of teaser podcast the other day, just to kind of just to spread to the masses and get the word out. But I was talking a little bit about the fact, like I mentioned, I'm on a 10-week weight loss course at the moment. Well, it's going to take longer than 10 weeks, but this is week 4 of the first kind of 10-week phase. Really excited. So I'm about 12 kg down. I don't know what that is in pounds for you Americans, but
About 25 pounds. That's a pretty good.
Yes, that's not bad.
How much are you trying to lose?
Well, ultimately, I want to get down to about 100 kg, so a fair chunk to go. But I'm getting more and more focused by the day. It's pretty good, with the course. So weight loss coaching works. Give it a shout out to Ben and the team.
Nice.
But I've actually asked them to come on at some point, so that'll be cool. But yeah, no, it's good. It's just good to have that focus and have that support of people kind of around you, just cheering you along and giving you tips and whatnot. So it's going really well,
Well, it's cool to be on a journey, and it's great to document the journey. And I think it's important for people who listen to you who have similar goals to hear about the successes, but also the failures and the difficulties, and how you got through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. So it's I sort of realized recently that I kind of jumped into this whole thing kind of naively, but in a healthy way, because I'm realizing really quickly that it's a lot more than just health and fitness that I'm actually gaining right now. Like, as you and I have discussed a little bit in the last couple of weeks, just getting some self-confidence back and starting to really sort of find my voice. And that's why I was keen to relaunch my podcast, because I was just like, just sort of, just kind of getting that, getting my mojo back, I think is the term they use.
Very cool. Yeah. It's good to have your mojo. It's bad when you lose it. It's nice when you find it again. So it's good. That sounds exciting. So, cool. So this what's this episode all about?
Well, I didn't want to. I've got some ideas and some questions to throw your way, but I didn't want to restrict us to any one sort of topic. But one of the things I'd like to touch on briefly, if we may, is just the concept of mentors and the importance of getting around good mentors. So just for a little bit of context, I will get you to kind of sketch out a little bit, because like I said to you, I do want to consider my audience this time around. I must confess the last kind of round of podcasts I think was good, but I sometimes forget to consider the audience,
Yeah, well, no, it's okay. I think the audience is, probably hoping to listen to a candid conversation. But,
for sure.
I think, when you think about mentorship, I think for a lot of people, maybe it gets a little confusing because, it gets oversold in some ways that, there's like some coach is going to do everything for you, or that you need to have the right person to make things happen. But, I just saw an article on the Huffington Post about a Forbes article where they were saying, Khloe, I think it was Khloe Kardashian, one of the Kardashians, is a self-made billionaire. And there was some criticism about that because obviously she may have put a lot of work in and she worked very hard, but there's also this whole thing where it's like, look, she came from a family that had a lot of resources. She had a great access to a great education. She was on a reality TV show. I mean, a very successful one. So it's kind of that, there's a point where some of these experts who've been doing a lot of research at University of Texas in economics on the role of DNA versus the role of community and environment and upbringing. They said overwhelmingly, DNA has almost nothing to do with it. It has almost everything to do with your zip code and the family that you come from. And basically that, parents who are driven, who have a lot of access and resources, who do well financially are much more likely to have children who will, do similarly, which isn't terribly surprising, right?
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't mean that other people can't do it, but I think the bigger moral of the story for me is that zip code matters, who you associate with matters a lot, and getting around people who can help you get what they want because they've demonstrated that they can do that is really, really important, regardless of what it is. And that's always been a key factor in my life. I mean, I did a podcast on entitlement on the Kick Aspirational podcast where I talked about some of this. And that, one, I think it's good to recognize the assets that you have and the things that you don't have, and then to figure out how to get around, be a part of, and participate in a world where you can get what you're looking for out of life, and find the people who can help you do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, just for context, I'll just sort of throw it out there. You know, you and I have sort of, you know, we've known each other for a good couple of years at this point. And I definitely would, you know, obviously first and foremost put you in the category as a friend, just to point that out. But, you know, also a mentor and somebody I do look up to and have learned a heck of a lot and continue to learn a heck of a lot from. And you know, I think for me, it's a very deliberate thing. You know, I see people that I admire and look up to, and I think one of the things that is a barrier or can be a barrier to getting around good mentors is that sort of feeling of not being enough. And sort of you can, when you see someone that's, you know, you'd sort of deem as successful or inspiring, it can be very intimidating. So I was keen to sort of touch on that, because that's been an experience for me that I've had to kind of work through, because you're just like, why you sort of have all these insecurity questions pop up, like, why would this person give me the time of day? What, you know, who am I? Like, you know, and you have to kind of process all that. And I just want to say, you know, as an example, like, and it was one of the reasons that I was keen to have you on this first episode to relaunch, was because you've very much been a person for me that's given me space to kind of figure things out. And being a mentor, like you said, when I refer to you as a mentor, it's not in the sense at all of like, just, yeah, you've just handed me all these answers and just like, here, Mark, go do this. That's not been the experience at all. It's been like just watching you, you know, obviously from a distance, being in New Zealand, just kind of do what you do and how you kind of operate in the world, and just, you know, gleaning from that in a very organic way has sort of been my experience. And I think it's just something I would encourage people to do. And I think, you know, Tony Robbins, who's someone I really look up to as well and listen to quite a lot, sort of talks about the formula for success and how nobody really flukes success. You know, there is a pattern, and there are keys and strategies, and it does take being a very deliberate person. And I think, like you talked about the whole zip code thing, you know, for sure, obviously that's, you know, pretty self-evident, but at the same time, I am a strong believer in the fact that people can make choices that set their life on a different path as well, you know, and that's my hope.
Yeah, I think that's a, you know, here's the thing for me. It's like, you know, whether it's my kids or whether it's people I work with, I think, you know, people need to figure out what they really want, and they need to make sure that they're going after that, because life is short. And it doesn't mean that you always get to do everything you want all the time, but it does mean that in the little daily decisions, I think people should be making, you know, every decision every day. Is this the direction I really want to go in my life? Is this decision taking me closer to what I want, or is it pushing me further away? And, you know, it doesn't mean that you take big ungodly leaps and crash and burn all the time, but I think it does mean that you're regularly, consistently filling your time with as many of the activities and actions and behaviors that are going to bring you where you want to go. And being deliberate, being disciplined, and being focused on that is kind of what makes all the difference. And so that's, you know, with you, or whether it's my own sons, I think, you know, to me, it's always been about what do you want? And what is your action plan to get there? And how can I help? But if you don't figure out that first, then, you know, if I'm just trying to sell you an idea, it's not very helpful and probably won't make you very excited about it. It won't be good for either one of us. But if we can spend some time identifying what it is you're trying to accomplish, like losing weight, you know, you had told me you were working on weight loss at the beginning of the year, and you were making some really good progress. And then you had also mentioned that you were concerned about, you know, making it sustainable. And so part of what I had said was, you know, maybe there's a group of people in New Zealand that I can introduce you to who might be able to help you. And that's where, you know, Ben Physics Group, I thought might be, although he's Australian, his New Zealand team, I thought might be useful for you.
Oh, absolutely. Just as a small caveat to what you just said, you mentioned the idea of crashing and burning. I just want to point out, as somebody who has crashed and burned multiple times, that's not the end either. Just to say, if you are out there and you have been through significant failure or kind of suffering or kind of crashing, that you can get up again. Like, I can honestly testify to that. it's not the end, and you can always turn things around. Like, I do kind of, I don't know where it comes from sometimes, but I do refer to myself as an eternal optimist. I always believe that, however low we find ourselves, you can always start to make progress somewhere, and start trying to piece it together, and that's part of, that's definitely part of my journey and where I want to kind of encourage other people as well. So yeah, but that's true what you were saying, like that whole idea of figuring out what you want, because I think most people don't take the time to even ask that question. I think is like, because we get, as human beings, we kind of get handed ideas and values and ideas about what's possible, and I think that's half the battle. Is actually Ben posted a thing on his Facebook that I actually reposted, was this kind of meme that talked about how he's like, you don't get what you want, you get what you expect, and I was just like, yeah, that's so true. So
yeah, no, that's great. It's really good.
So yeah, well, actually, as I preempted with you before this conversation, well, I was going to throw some what did I call them? Some Venisms at you, some of your catchphrases, and maybe see if you could sort of unpack them a little bit. And one of the big things I've heard you say a few times is "we're all made of people," which I think is quite a funny, fascinating little pithy line that you're quite fond of. And I just wonder, I think, to me, as someone who knows you reasonably well, I kind of get the sentiment, straight away. But for somebody uninitiated in the way of the Vandies.
Yeah. What I'm trying to get to with a statement like that is that, I travel a lot. I have a company, we do business in 60 countries around the world. I work with people from all different religions, economic backgrounds, skin colors, nationalities, you name it. All over Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, India, Southern Africa, the Americas. And, and a lot of the people that we work with don't come from, famous backgrounds or, backgrounds with a lot of money or education. We work with a lot of small entrepreneurs who want to change their lives. And the thing for me that's been kind of, I guess, eye-opening, I was raised in a home where we had this fundamental belief that everybody is a child of God. Maybe another way to say it without the religion is we're all made from stardust. And when I meet people, I tend to find that most people generally want the same things. They may express it differently. They may have different words for it. They may have different religious backgrounds or slightly different, moral codes. But at the end of the day, murder is murder, hate is hate, love is love, and being hospitable is being hospitable. And the thing that I've kind of discovered is that underneath it all is this essence that makes humans humans. And I think that's what I mean when I say, look, we're all made out of people. And that, to me, we're all on this journey and we're all pilgrims. And if you're a traveler, if you've traveled a lot, you start to realize that the importance of being hospitable, of sharing love with somebody, whether it's a meal or a seat in a car or on a train or a bus or whatever it is that when you help a fellow human, when you add value to somebody without asking for anything back, you create value. And that is ultimately one of the most fulfilling things that you can do in life. And when you can do it at scale and you can help a lot of people gain value, it's really, really powerful. It's like not an aphrodisiac, but it's like catnip for the soul. And so for me, I try to, not see race or color, not see religion. I try to just see people at the core of their being and understand who they are a little bit, and then find out what I can do to help them. And so when we're launching new markets, or if I'm going over to work with somebody, these days, I really don't make any more or less money by going to one market or another or opening a new country. We sold our business, and my compensation isn't really tied to that anymore. I still do the work because I love seeing people
Yes.
break through a
Yeah.
barrier. I love seeing somebody realize a dream or a goal. And
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of other things I love to do, that's something that I never want to stop doing, because that to me is why people are here.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'll bounce right off of that idea, because I was going to sort of ask you as well. I mean, I've experienced it in our friendship. I've seen the way that inspiring other people kind of lights you up and inspires you. And I wonder, was there any sort of significant moments early on in your life where you realized that because I mean, you can say, yeah, that's true for everyone, but that's not true for everyone. Like, that's unique in many ways. And I wonder for yourself, I mean, were there some key moments where you realized that inspiring and feeding other people's soul, I guess you could say, kind of, gave you that energy and sort of compelled you?
Um, well, like I said, I mean, I was fortunate to be raised in a functional family with two parents who, exhibited love for each other, and I was raised in a tradition. It's, very, it's very, it sounds very exclusive, Dutch Christian Reform. So it's a faith based on a nationality in a way, or at least a national culture, the Dutch culture, and in my case, living in America. But the thing that we were all taught and grew up, kind of repeating, and we were really encouraged to act like, was that everybody matters, and that everyone, it doesn't matter what they do, doesn't matter where they come from, everyone starts at the same place. And in fact, I think the Dutch are kind of famous for this. The Dutch are very blunt people. They never really had serious royalty. They do have a king and queen, but they're probably the most humble king and queen of any European royalty. I mean, they ride bikes. The king will fly airplanes for KLM from time to time. They do regular things. And in the Netherlands, they always try, and if no one gets too high, people will knock you down if you get too proud. And
Yeah.
I think New Zealand and Australia have similar cultures in a way. And so one of the things that that we were raised with was, it doesn't really matter what family you're born into, or what you do for a living, or how much money you make. We're all cut from the same cloth, and we all need to remember that for us, for our belief system, that there's something bigger than all of us, and that is something that we ought to be sovereign. That is, we ought to be submissive to. And I think I like the way David Foster Wallace says it. He says he was agnostic, but he said, we're all going to worship something. Make sure you know what you're worshiping. Kind of make sure you're deliberate about what you're worshiping. And I think for me, growing up the way I did, I haven't stuck with all of the the dogma that I grew up with. But I think the thing that did stick was, we are all at our essence. We all have equal worth at our essence. We may do things that create a different economic value or different social value, or other values that may change, but at the essence of who we are, it's all equal. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, because as I was growing up, I did mission trips. I spent 2 summers in the Bahamas. We did a construction trip at one point, and then I was a camp counselor another time. We were regularly. My parents required that we do acts of service. They required that we contribute. That we tithe, that we give money to the church. And all of those things, and they did it in a way that they wanted us to really enjoy it, appreciate it, and be grateful for it. And it tied back into this whole idea of kind of abundant living, of living gratefully, of this belief that the things that we have don't just come from us, but they're because we participate in a universe that is loving and moving in a direction, and because we all have different rewards and different failures. When somebody needs something, you go out of your way to help them. You can't help everybody all the time, but you can take a percentage of your time and a percentage of your, of what you have, and you can try and pay that forward. I don't like the term giving back, because I don't I don't think somebody else gave it to me. But I do think that paying it forward is a good idea in the sense that when you've benefited, it's good to be able to share that benefit with somebody else. Not that they have a right to it, but that we have an obligation or a responsibility to try and help other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. What, like, just thinking back to your podcast that you mentioned earlier, I'll just plug that for you as well, Kick Aspirational. Um, you know, I obviously help you a little bit with that, which is such a cool thing. Like, I mean, it honestly feels good to me to be kind of on that team. I'm just like, I love this whole vibe. I love, the whole idea. And like I said to you the other day, I actually had gone back and listened to some of the first few episodes, and you sort of talked about, you really built that foundation, like you'd said earlier in this conversation, about helping other people break through barriers. And I kind of wonder, in that, like, to sort of throw a question about that, is like, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers that stop people not even taking action? Like, that's kind of another step, but like to see the possibility of what they can achieve. Like, what do you think are some of the limiting ideas that people kind of get stuck on?
I think most people don't really believe that they can, create the future that they want. And I think what most people need are little steps in belief so that they can give themselves permission to do more. And they can trust themselves. I think there's a lot of people who sabotage their own success because they're afraid of, I think subconsciously a lot of times, what it means if they succeed. Well, wait, if I take control of this, then that means I'm going to have to, really, really do something. I have to commit to this.
Yeah.
You see it in alcoholics a lot. You see them sabotage themselves, and it's why they have a group that they meet with on daily or weekly. There's a whole and what Alcoholics Anonymous really is all about is spiritual recovery. It's about repairing your soul, and I think when you realize that we all sabotage ourselves in different ways. We're all addicted to things that aren't good for us in different ways. And when we start to actually do the work to figure out how to break through those cycles, whether it's cycles of poverty or cycles of alcohol or cycles of whatever it is, we start to realize that, there's interior work that has to get done. And then there's also exterior work. So things you have to work on inside yourself, your fears, your discipline issue, all the different little things that, the way that you react to people, your emotional state, all those things matter. And the other thing is there's external things you have to do. Sometimes, for example, if you want to change your weight, first you have to decide and you're really going to do it, and you have to commit that you're going to make it happen, and you have to do it every day. The second thing you have to do is you actually have to go out and move. You have to change how you eat. You have to change how you move, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're getting the steps in and that you're keeping the calories down, you're eating the right foods. And I think, you're going through all that right now. But if, Jim Collins says this, he says, the difference between, losing some weight versus, he calls it a big, hairy, audacious goal. And he said, for most people to really change, you've got to set something so big and radical that you're going to have to change almost everything to get there. And he uses the example of, if you, at the beginning of the year in January, if you say, I think I'm going to lose a little weight this year, he goes, what that really means is you're going to read the box of Cracker Jack, like the list of ingredients, before you eat it, but you're still going to eat it. Versus if you say, I'm going to win a triathlon, or I'm going to drop 100 kilos, that's a totally different deal, right?
Yeah.
And because that takes changing your life, changing almost everything about what you do, and sticking to it and doing it on a regular basis. And so I think the first thing is figuring out what you want. The second thing is creating a plan. The third thing is then finding, a community and coaches and mentors who will help you stick to that plan and get it done. And by the way, make sure it's maybe the right plan too. It could be that the plan's a little off. You need to tweak it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think like a lot of my heart, and especially with these conversations that at least I've tried to have over the last couple of years, is, is to help people with that internal stuff and that emotional stuff. Like, that's big. I mean, not to say I feel, I'm not an expert either, but it's in that department where I feel like I do have something to offer because of my journey and because of what I've, sort of been through. And I think one of the things that I feel like is a barrier sometimes is, it does take humility to put yourself around people more, I guess, quote unquote, successful than yourself, or people who inspire you to be something beyond where you are. Because, it's easy to sort of put yourself around people that don't raise your expectation because it's low energy and it doesn't cost you much. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, it takes that kind of deliberate effort to sort of put yourself in that position to actually change. And it's interesting to me, some of the, there's some pretty profound stories out there of people that have every sort of reason under the sun to be cynical or to give up or whatever it is. And they find this source of incredible joy and energy and inspiration. And yet people who kind of don't really have much to complain about end up, just moaning and, complaining and, not really putting many expectations on themselves to achieve much beyond just a, normal day-to-day existence sort of a thing. And that's always been interesting to me. And, yeah, it's interesting, like whenever I come across people like that, it's always fascinating to hear people's story and things like that. So,
well, so I just did a podcast with Dave Birchie and his dad, Larry Johnson from Life Builders in Detroit. And Larry talked about, he had a very successful background. He had sold a large tech business and done very well. And he and his wife decided in retirement to go and buy a bunch of city blocks of houses in Detroit and help rebuild community there. And one of the things he said that was frustrating is he was working with these, people who were living in grinding poverty, is he would say, why can't you just be on time? That's essential, da, 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 da. And he said the assumption in the just is that you don't understand that these people have to get on a bus that could take 45 minutes to get them to whatever the appointment or work or job is, could take 3 hours. The just is, they might be a single mom with kids at home, and they have to figure out what to do with those kids while they are trying to get to this appointment or this job or this work and then get back. Why can't you just fill out this application? They might not have access to a computer or to the internet. There's all kinds of details, granularity that you have to dig into when somebody is stuck. And I think, the first question is you have to earn enough trust that they're going to tell you about those pieces and parts that are broken in their life so that you can start to help them put it back together. And it doesn't really matter where you are. It could be in the inner city, could be in a rural part of the world, could be with wealthy people, could be with poor people, could be with people in the middle. Anybody who wants to change direction, who wants to break through barriers, and wants to have a mentor, you have to have that element of trust or it'll never happen.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say not that there's a, kind of one-size-fits-all sort of answer to this question, but what direction would you sort of point somebody, or are there any sort of key questions you'd encourage people to ask themselves if they're at a place where they may be feeling sort of restless, or in that place where they're kind of wanting to take a step, but they don't know in which direction, or they don't know where to start, or they're sort of battling a bit of doubt, or just kind of, generally speaking, like where's a good sort of starting place for people that want to go on a journey to sort of, raise their expectations about their own lives and sort of, create their own lives, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, I think a really good question is, and this is, I love Jim Collins. I think he has a lot of good mechanisms to help people figure this stuff out. One of them that he uses is, if you had $200 million but only 5 years left to live, what would you do tomorrow? And how's it different than what you're going to do tomorrow? And he says it's not about it's not really about having a lot of money, although the point of the $200 million is money doesn't matter. You kind of do whatever you want. He said, then some people say, oh, I'd get a Ferrari, or I'd go on a cruise. He said, but here's the other piece of it. You only have 5 years left to live. So he said, for well-adjusted people, then you start to say, well, wait a minute. I've got these relationships I have to fix. I've got, these people I want to help. There's legacy things I want to get accomplished before I'm no longer on this planet. And to me, I think that mechanism is a good one to just take some inventory and say, okay, what would my day look like tomorrow if I had $200 million, but only 5 years left to live? And how's that different than the day that I'm going to have? And then the question starts to become, what do I have to do every day, every time that I'm thinking about little decisions? Are those little decisions bringing me towards the things I want, or are they going to push me further away? And I think that becomes a great starting place for people. What is the life you want to live? What do you want to accomplish before, your days are over here? And then I think then it becomes down to, if you want to get those things done, what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to change? How can you start taking advantage of empty spots in your day where you're entertaining yourself with a TV or computer or, social media or video games or whatever it is that you really don't need to be doing? How can you be reapplying your life to get those things done? And who do you need to help you? How do you start finding the people to get around you to get there so that you can make that happen?
Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to a talk from Tony Robbins the other day, and he was saying about, how people sort of make excuses and say, oh, I'm just not motivated and things like that. And he goes, he was in the context of sort of losing weight. He goes, yeah, you are. You're just motivated to stay fat. It's just like, he's just talking about how we have to sometimes like shift the patterns of our thinking and our, I know it's something you've talked to me a little bit about the idea of associations in our brain with certain things and ideas, and it is possible to change those. I know that it is from experience, and how, like, I think that's kind of the, be a good place to sort of maybe wind down the conversation and wrap up. But, that's why I was keen to talk about the value of mentorship, because I know the value of it in my own journey, and how, the best way to lift your expectations about what's possible is to get around people that have higher expectations than you. Like, that might not be that profound an idea, but I know experientially that it's true. You kind of marinate in that space. And I think, we all create environments around ourselves. Some people who are highly stressed, you can feel it. They don't even have to say anything. I had a really interesting experience yesterday. Actually, I saw this girl walking around the hostel here, and like, she was trying to sell her car, and I sort of gave her a bit of help. She asked a couple of questions, and I mean, it might have sounded a bit forward, but I could just see, I was like, this girl's like profoundly sad. Like, I could just, it was like, to me at least, it was like super obvious. And again, I'm a sort of very empathetic person, and if I see someone who I sort of sense is hurting, I'm like, oh, I want to kind of fix it if I can, or do something to alleviate people's pain. And I said, oh, you look, I just sort of said something. I was like, oh, you look a bit sad. And she goes, oh yeah. She's like, and it was like she was dying to just tell somebody. She goes, I'm absolutely heartbroken. That's what she said. And I was like, wow. I was like, oh my goodness, like, what is going on? That's crazy. Like, just that kind of honesty. But I think that's a lot of my heart is, is connecting with people on that sort of real sort of level. That's where I feel strong, and I think that's the other thing as well, is that you can be around people who inspire you, but it doesn't mean, as much as I'd say you inspire me, and you do, I wouldn't want to live your life. I don't want to be you. That's not the point. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's pretty good.
I'm sure it is. Don't get me wrong. I do it for a few days, but whatever. But it's the people that inspire me. I think it's something I actually said might have talked to Rob Bell about it. Was that it's people that inspire me to be myself more. Is what kind of I love.
Yeah.
That they. The people that I get really drawn to personally are people that are just so comfortable in their own skin, and they know who they are. And we don't need to sort of get into it because I just realised we have talked about it on the other podcasts, which I can link in the description.
No, but I think to your point is you want to be around people that help you become your best self, and that aren't really interested in you mimicking them or parroting what they say or being like them, but are interested in you becoming you. And I think that's ultimately the most important thing that you can figure out. And I guess when I ask people, what do you want to do? What do you want to become? What do you want your life to be like? Really, what I'm looking for is people saying, man, if I could just do these things, or if I could have this time, or if I could be with this person, or if I could, whatever that is, figuring that out is probably one of the most important things you can do. And then 2, writing it down, actually getting out a piece of paper and writing it down, and then actively creating a plan to get there. What are the steps you can take right now to start moving in that direction? And I would say, what are the things you have to stop doing in order to go in that direction? Because a to-do list is great, but a not to-do list is almost as important, maybe more important for some people. And then who is going to help you make that happen? So those are some of the big things that most people have to figure out.
Just in closing, for anyone out there who's keen to sort of get into this and maybe there's some resources, are there any maybe a couple of books or anything you'd recommend to kind of that would be sort of insightful for people?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of good things. What we can do is I can there's some articles that might be really helpful. I think the Jim Collins Inc. magazine, $200 million in 5 years left to live, is a really good one. It's from the 90s, but it's excellent. It's timeless. There's some great books. Simon Sinek has a great book, Starting with Why, which is, again, it's why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want? If you can't figure out the why, the rest of it's going to be really unfulfilling. There's some other practices that I think are important. Getting in a daily reading habit, meditating. I think meditation is really great because it helps slow your brain down so you can actually step out of the busyness and step away from the urgent. So maybe you can start figuring out what's important. And because the urgent and the important are not necessarily the same thing. Sometimes there's things that are urgent and important, but sometimes there's also things that are urgent and unimportant. And then anything that's neither urgent nor important, you just need to totally ditch, right? But But those are some of the things. Those are a couple of starting places that I'd recommend.
And just building a little bit on that idea of why. It's again another sort of big Tony Robbins idea, but it's that idea that he sort of calls himself. People think he's the how guy. How do I do this? And he goes, I'm the why guy. I'm all about the why. And I think if you have a strong enough why and you know why you want what you want, you'll figure out the how somehow. You'll get resourceful and you'll cobble something together that works for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tony Robbins, I think, does a good job helping people figure some of that out. And some of it's figuring out who you are and what what's going to make you happy. And there's some great tools for that too. There's a great book I just read by Thich Nhat Hanh called it's just titled You Are Here. And it's, a lot of it there is also realizing that things probably aren't going to make you happy. Accomplishments may give you some happiness, but it may not make you ultimately happy. At the end of the day, understanding how to be grateful on a regular daily basis is really fundamentally important as well. And, I think part of being unhappy has nothing to do with your environment and nothing to do with how much you have or don't have. It's just having enough awareness of where you stand in the universe to start to recognize that life itself is worth celebrating. Yeah.
I think, on that subject of gratitude, just to sort of, I think that's a great place to land the conversation, because that to me is a very good foundation to build from is, hey, thank you that, whether it's, you might refer to it as God or whatever, the universe, whatever terminology you use, but to just be in that space of, hey, I get to be here. I get to do what I do, and to be thankful, even if it might not be your dream job at this point or whatever it is, wherever you are, but just to go, hey, I can breathe. I mean, I've just been thinking lately, with this weight loss thing, like, thank God that I didn't get myself to such an unhealthy place that I couldn't even walk. Like, I see people, like, with canes and chairs and all kinds of things to help them because they've become incapacitated. And I'm like, I was just profoundly grateful. I was like, my goodness, like, how, thank God that I can actually turn this around, and, that I can walk and breathe and, and do something practical to help myself. That's just amazing. But we'll maybe wrap things up, and thank you so much as always for being an awesome, kick-aspirational guest.
Happy I could help, Mark, and happy to be invited. It's always good to hear your voice, and I'm happy we can make some time.
Cool. Awesome.